Yesterday's Select Committee hearings here at the Victorian Parliament showcased some of the important revelations Victorians need to be able to see and hear about. The Commonwealth Games debacle was obviously something that cost Victorians many hundreds of millions of dollars. That figure is growing, and it tarnished our reputation, not just nationally but across the world. This is a serious matter. Given what happened yesterday, I can't overstate how serious this is. It's serious because Jacinta Allen needs to appear before the Select Committee of Inquiry to refute the mounting allegations against her, what she knew and when she knew it. Because those allegations now mounting against Jacinta Allen suggest very strongly now that Jacinta Allen misled the Parliament and misled the Victorian people. In light of yesterday's evidence, this is not just a test now of Jacinta Allen's leadership. It's a test of her credibility, a test of her character. Is Jacinta Allen, in the face of all of this mounting evidence against her, prepared to front up to the Select Committee of Inquiry and answer very important and very basic questions, not only about what she knew, but when she knew it, and why she kept that from people around her, and in particular the Victorian people? We know from yesterday's hearings there is now irrefutable evidence that Jacinta Allen knew that the cost of the Commonwealth Games had almost doubled as early as March and April. That's contrary to the information Jacinta Allen has told the Victorian Parliament that she only knew in the preceding weeks. That's completely false, and it's been completely discredited in light of the evidence now before the Select Committee. This is serious. Jacinta Allen needs to answer and refute the evidence mounting against her, which suggests she knew a lot more than she was letting on, and that she actually and deliberately deceived people around her about the Commonwealth Games. I don't believe Jacinta Allen can stand by the comments she made to the Public Accounts and Estimates Committee when she told that committee and the Victorian people that the Games were making tremendous progress, when she knew the cost of the Games had, well earlier than that hearing, blown out by billions of dollars. This is a test of Jacinta Allen's leadership and her character. At the end of the day, this inquiry is important to all Victorians, no matter where you live. It's important because all of us as Victorians need to be able to believe what our Premier says. If you can't believe what your Premier says, how can you hope to lead a viable government? How can we as Victorians trust anything you say or anything you do on our behalf? So as Victorians see this committee unfold, I know that they'll understand the importance of this committee. Truth in politics matters. Principle in politics matters. Integrity and credibility in politics matters. Now more than ever, when Victorians are crying out for leadership that is principled, that is ethical, that responds genuinely to the needs of all Victorians, whether they live in the city, in the outer suburbs and growth corridors, or our regional areas. That's why this inquiry is important. We need people leading our state who can be trusted. And what we're seeing through this Committee of Inquiry is mounting evidence against the Premier 2 weeks into her role. And what does the new Premier do? She hides in a corner and pretends there's nothing to see here as the evidence mounts against her. If she wants to come out and refute that evidence, then she needs to appear before that Select Committee, because if she doesn't, the only inference Victorians can draw is that she deliberately misled the Parliament and deliberately misled all of us as Victorians. That can't be acceptable in Victoria. We have to, and we have every right to, as Victorians, insist on principled and honest leadership. Jacinta Allen has a chance to overcome this test of character, refute the allegations against her, appear before the Select Committee, and go some way to restoring the confidence of all Victorians in their government, because it has been trashed over recent months. Not only was the debacle around the Commonwealth Games bad enough, but now we have a cover-up, and added to the cover-up, we now have blatant stonewalling, a refusal to even appear before a committee as all of this evidence mounts against Jacinta Allen. She has her opportunity Let's all wait and see whether she takes that opportunity. I'll take some questions.
The Premier says that she wasn't misleading anyone because she was talking about the actuals, not the estimates. Do you buy that?
No one can believe what Jacinta Allen is saying on this. She was confronted months earlier than her PAYAC appearance that the costs were blowing out. This was the experts telling the Deputy Premier that the cost of her Commonwealth Games was blowing out. It was unmanageable without huge additional money. And for the Premier to say that, there's some reason that she was able to maintain the fiction that the Games were making tremendous progress simply cannot be believed, and she cannot be trusted on this. And the real test of whether she wants to persuade Victorians that she can be trusted appear before the Select Committee.
She says that goes against precedent and practice. Is that your understanding?
What I would say is the Commonwealth Games debacle went against all precedent and all practice. It was the biggest debacle our state has seen in decades. It's costing hundreds of millions of dollars, and that figure is growing. And worse, it trashed our reputation domestically and internationally. There's no precedent for the Commonwealth Games, so let's not worry too much about practice and precedent. Let's ask ourselves, what's the right thing to do? What's the principled thing to do here? Jacinta Allen, the principled thing to do is for you to appear before the Select Committee of Inquiry and, if you will, refute the evidence against you about what you knew and when you knew it.
Does this cast doubt over other budget submissions made under former portfolios?
Let's understand what happened here in relation to the budget. Before the May budget, the Victorian government, and in particular Jacinta Allen, knew that the cost of her Commonwealth Games had blown out by billions. The experts were telling her that. And yet they doubled down on a budget that was dishonest. It was deceptive. They knew the figures weren't right, and yet they published those figures. And what it now does is it casts a question mark over everything else in the budget. If the government was prepared basically to lie about the cost of the Commonwealth Games in their published budget papers, what does it say about the costings around major projects? What does it say about the investments we desperately need in our hospitals and ambulance service and schools? Everything now has a huge and growing question mark over it.
Do people care about the nuances of it? I mean, the Games were cancelled. We are, maybe 600 million in the hole, but it is better than 67 billion, which is Labor's argument. Do you think people care? Why should they care about who knew what exactly when?
I believe Victorians care about this inquiry because, first of all, they need to know that they can trust and believe their Premier. What do we say about the government's leadership if the Victorian people cannot trust anything they say? And that's what we have on the basis of the articles. But there's a second reason why this inquiry is important. We need to make sure these kinds of debacles don't occur in the future. What we are trying to do under my leadership in the opposition, working, I'm happy to say, with all of the non-government parties in the upper house who supported the Select Committee of Inquiry, we're trying to restore that level of credibility, an ethical basis to how we are governed in Victoria, because those principles, those ethics and standards, if they're absent, as we've seen in recent months, the Victorian people pay for it. But they pay for it in the form of the Commonwealth Games debacle, but they also pay for it in terms of money that's not there for their hospitals and schools and ambulances and child protection. Basic roads maintenance is not met because government wastes money. This inquiry is important because it matters to each and every one of us as Victorians, not just because we're principled and we want good government and honest government. It matters to us all as Victorians because we miss out if money is wasted on things that can't go into hospitals, schools, ambulances, and all those desperate services we need.
You mentioned it trashed our international reputation. Have you had any contact with Visit Victoria or any feedback from people saying that they don't want to bring events here anymore?
I've certainly had people raising with me that Victoria's reputation internationally has been damaged. I've had various people raising that with me. The government has been very resistant to making information available about representations they're getting, but my colleagues and I are certainly getting that feedback from people across the world. When MPs have travelled, they've received that feedback, and I have certainly received messages internationally about how we're now seen. And for decades, Victoria has been a proud champion of global events. Everybody who wants to come to Australia wants to be in Melbourne and in Victoria. And they're thinking twice about that now because of this Commonwealth Games debacle. So that's why this inquiry is important to all of us as Victorians. We need to make sure these debacles don't occur in the future, because not only is there a financial impact, but there's a reputational impact, and there's the impact to all of us in terms of the services we then miss out on.
There was an inquiry yesterday from some senior public servants that no, there hasn't been a blip. There really hasn't been any change in people's approach. They haven't noticed anything. People still want to bring just as much work, events, things here to Melbourne.
I don't think any of us, until the full truth is known about the Commonwealth Games debacle, should take anything seriously when it's coming from the government. What we've seen is rampant politicisation of the public service in Victoria, which the Ombudsman herself is now investigating. And what else would you expect the government to be saying but that everything is going smoothly? That's what Jacinta Allen did at PAYAC, and what has now seen her in so much trouble over that. We know from the feedback we're getting that people are concerned about how reliable Victoria, and in particular the Victorian government, is as a partner in major events. And we're certainly receiving feedback about the reputational damage the cancellation of the Commonwealth Games caused. Thank you very much. Cheers.